Nessus was still mid-river, trotting back to the far bank, when suddenly I found I was back in a dark wood, this time unmarked by any path at all. I looked around. Each barren, blood-black tree was like a plate from a sailor's book of knots, its branches bent and pleached and coiled as if to demonstrate some novel and ingenious kind of torment. In the topmost branches of those wretched trees I saw the Snatcher build its nest, whose kin drove Aeneas from the Strophades, spoiled his table, and spat out his ruin. There it squats, its human face all wrong, above its fledged gut, wide-winged, razor-clawed. With its avian knack of mimicry, its song is a loop-tape of the children it has tortured. I felt so desolate, it gave me a start to hear his voice. "Now, friend, before we leave, stand still for just a moment, and listen hard. This place is almost too strange to believe." Below the pitiful sobs and chokes and cries, lower moans were echoing through the glade, yet I saw no one to make them. "Master, why do they hide from us?" I asked. "Are they afraid?" Then he replied, "Break off a little spray from any plant here, then I guarantee things will become clearer." I snapped away a twig from the bush that stood closest to me. In the trunk a red mouth opened like a cut. Then a voice screamed out, "Why are you tearing me?" It was a woman's voice. Blood began to spurt from the broken tip. Are you hearing me? When exactly did I earn your scorn? Supposing I'd a heart black as a snake's, I was a woman once, that now am thorn. What would a little pity have set you back? Just in the way a split cord of green wood, lit at one end, starts to spit and blister at the other, so it was the words and blood bubbled from her splintered mouth. "Dear sister," my guide interrupted, "if only my poor friend had recalled what I had written of this hell, I know he never would have raised his hand against you, but the truth is so incredible," I urged him on. "Forgive his ignorance, but he can make amends. Just tell him who you were and how you came here. When he returns to the upper world, your fame can bloom anew." And then the tree laughed. "Bravo, sir, well said. You'd spend a lifetime trying to put it worse. In my design, that scalded beech ahead would be reserved for the biographers. And if it's self-improvement your friend seeks, perhaps it's courtesy you need to teach. Ah, but you can see that I am weak, and allured into a little human speech. Very well. When I was small, I held both keys that fitted my father's heart, which I unlocked and locked again with such a delicate ease he felt no turning, and he heard no click. He desired no other confidence but mine, nor would I permit one. I was so bound to my splendid office that, when he resigned, I followed. They had to dig me from the ground. So the post remained, and I remained as true, and, in time, I came to interview for his successor. None of them would do until a black shape cut the light in two, and at once I knew my ideal candidate. But that green-eyed courtesan, that vice of courts who had always stalked his halls and kept his gate, the years had steeped me in her sullen arts, and my tongue grew hot with her abysmal need. Slowly I turned it on my second Caesar until it seemed to him his every deed did nothing but disgrace his predecessor. So he left me too. But the tongue still burned away till I sung the bright world only to estrange it, and prophesied my end so nakedly mere decency insisted I arrange it. My mind then, in its voice of reasoned harm, told me death would broker my release from every shame, and back into his arms, so I made my date. It was bad advice. But if your friend should somehow cut a path back to the light, then tell them I betrayed the spirit, not the letter of the oath, by far the lesser crime in our dark trade. My master hissed, "Listen. She's silent now. Quickly, don't just throw away your chance. Ask her if there's more you wish to know." I replied, "My lord, you know the questions I brought with me, so ask what I would ask. I have no stomach for this conversation." He nodded. "That this man may fulfill his task and witness for you at his final station, imprisoned soul, if you could bear to, say just how the spirit comes to be so caught in these terrible spasms, and if perhaps one day it might be wrested free of its own knots." Long seconds passed before she spoke again. "Remember, though these words are some relief, the breath I draw to fill them gives a pain beyond your knowledge. I will be brief. The very instant that the furious soul tears itself from the flesh, Some inverse power bundles it screaming down the sudden hole that opens in the bed or bath or floor. Then Minos directs it to the seventh pit, where it spins down to the starless nursery to seed wherever fortune tosses it. There it roots, and drives up through the clay to grow into the shape of its own anguish. Finally, the harpies swarm to crop the leaves and buds, a blessing and a scourge, since it pains us, and yet lets the pain escape. And like you, at the final clarion, we'll return to fish our bodies from the ground, but never again to wear them. Such is the sin of our ingratitude. Instead, we'll drag them down to this dark street, and here they'll stay, strung out forever in their miserable parade, naked and still, each hung like a white coat on the hook of its own alienated shade.